Thank you. Congratulations to Lumi and Dream Data for doing something that is absolutely awesome, solving your problems for your customers. And that's not something that I am an investor now. I used to work with Sitecore, and now I'm an investor. And very often businesses think they're solving customers' problems, and then by the end of the day, they are just trying to solve their own problems and not really the customer's problems. And I'll try to elaborate some of that we did as well for at least for a while. How many knows Sitecore and know what we did here or what we do? So around half of us. Sitecore started out some years ago as a web content management system, which is basically a typewriter for the internet. It has something with processes, etc., etc. And throughout the journey, we started in 2001, and then in 2016 we sold off the majority of the company to EQT for, as Morten said, more than €1 billion. And in that journey, we had a number of interesting events happening, and I'll try to get a little bit into that. But as you can see, it's really hard to see from a graph like this. It's a stupid graph, but we grew in Italy more than 100% a year. Of course, 200%. Okay, am I done now? No? We grew more than 200% a year for many years, and you can't really see that on this graph, right? 100% growth in the end is actually that's what you can see, but not in the initially. And some of the things that happened in this time, as we started out as a web content management system, and back in 2007, we actually did something that you just spoke about, is actually figuring out, do customers really need a web content management system? So one of the hacks, so to say, is, let me get back to this problem with the product in a matter. I was so tend on trying to speak into yours, but let me talk about the internationalization because that makes sense. So we grew really fast, and I'm not sure if you saw, we started out, the first office outside of Denmark was in the US, then we went to UK, then we went to Australia, and then we went to Netherlands, and then we started in other regions. And that's very unusual for a Danish company to do so. Normally what I see with most businesses is that they have usually Denmark, then Sweden, Germany, Norway, so tend to stay in Europe, and then sometimes they go to Israel, and then you have something going on somewhere else because they find an opportunity, and they seize that opportunity, and then they open an office in a remote location, in Chile or whatever that may be. And that's really fucking bad. It's really bad to seize opportunities like that, because very often you get so excited about those opportunities that you tend to evaluate that individual opportunity as a standalone event rather than trying to evaluate it up against all your other options. And the thing is that when you bootstrap your business, we bootstrapped Sitecore, we didn't get any funding at all. So we bootstrapped our business, and we didn't have a lot of chips. So we had to really place our chips, our investments, the right places. So even though our sales reported back, what we are seeing right now is a spike in customers that we sell to in Israel, we should open an office. We actually have a person down there who's willing to open that office and run it for us. We had the ability to say no because we were really dictatorships about where we internationalized. What we really did was that we built a very large Excel sheet, and we factored in everything that we could come up with that could have an impact on where we wanted to invest. So that was, what's the number of investments in the .NET space in that region? Because our software was based on .NET, it was a platform. How many is actually investing in web because it was web content management system? Do people speak English or not? Do they understand the product or not? Are they investing in marketing? Whatever that may be. A lot of those factors went into this sheet, and also what's the gross domestic product, etc., etc. And then we ended up with a list like this. And it would say United States, Japan, Germany, United Kingdom, France, Canada, Australia, etc., etc. That was a list. We used Denmark as the benchmark, and then we calculated back with what's our potential to sell for in that region if we could do as we do in Denmark. And then we had to be practical. because we evaluated how costly it is actually to establish a location in a specific region. And what we came to the conclusion is, if we are to settle in Germany, then we need to translate our product into German. We need to have local speaking people who can support them. The documentation has to be in German as well. And that was a lot of cost if we go to Japan. So what we did was we looked at the English index and we eliminated everything that didn't have an index higher than 0.9. And then we came to that list. And you can see that Canada, we merged that with the United States. That was a region for itself. That was our game plan. We did fuck up because we seized the moment in our journey. We started out in the US, we started in the UK, and then we opened an office in Germany. But since we were bootstrapping, we didn't put in the investment of local people. We had the right person. We had 2 people who was willing to invest in it, and they ran with it. But we couldn't get the software translated. All those things that we had in our game plan, we ignored them. And that office, we had to close it down. And only after a while, when we had enough funding, then we could open in Japan, we could open in Germany, etc., etc. So, you should of course be opportunistic, but you have to every single time go back and weigh that opportunity against all the options that you have, because you only have a few chips. Okay, so next one is actually the suicide slide. That's where I talk about the product. So we built the web content management system, and then as I said early on, after a weekend, at this point we were growing 130% in 2007. And then Michael, my co-founder, he came in after a weekend and he presented me with these slides, and I was absolutely flabbergasted, because when you grow 130%, you think you're doing something right. You're solving your customers' problems. But he said, really? We are not really. We are just a typewriter for the internet. And I've been thinking this weekend, probably had a little bit too much to drink, but he has been thinking, we are not really solving a problem for the customers. We are just providing a tool for people. But what customers really want is something different. They want to communicate to their customers. So we need to build a product that would help them succeed. So at this point, we kind of committed suicide. We still sold the web content management system as we were building a new platform, but we started redesigning our entire product, pivoted the product, and built a digital marketing platform that was very similar to what we saw with the Dream Data IO. That was a long and expensive journey. We thought, okay, we need to have all of these systems merged into one communication platform. And that took us a long time. And we released that in 2009, beginning of 2009, which was fortunate because in 2008, the 18th of September, we saw all the crash with, at Wall Street. The Lehman Brothers cracked, and then we saw the entire collapse of the financial systems, and everybody was reverting over to open source systems, or whatever that systems would be out there, web content management systems, because they are about saving money. But our communication has changed. Meanwhile, we could now talk to the customers about achieving your goals, increasing your sales. And that was a different conversation. At this time, nobody was talking customer experiences. Nobody was talking digital marketing. So we suddenly had a blue ocean. And that was really interesting because we also start communicating to different people at the organization. We used to sell, because we were a typewriter for the internet, we were an optimization tool. So we sold to IT rather than selling to somebody who is really important. I'm not saying IT is not important, but somebody who can actually release funding for additional stuff. Now we spoke to marketers, we spoke to the C-level, CFOs, CMOs, CEOs. So that completely changed our game. Okay, the third one is something where we also messed up. And that was, so one of the things is, like when you have your own product, you tend not to, especially when it's going really well, then you are not going in and declaring your own system for dead, like we ended up doing. And that's really also what happens when you grow really fast. And I bet that every single person who runs a business, are in this right now. You're really having a high success, right? You're growing the business. In our case, and this was actually at a time when the business we were 1,000 people, and we are aiming for 30 to 35% growth a year. So, going from $200 million to $260 million, that's growth. And what we realized was that what is supposed to happen when you grow the business is that the revenue should increase and the cost should also increase, but not at the same pace as the revenue, which is great, right? And you tend to go through the business and operate the business really fast, and very seldom you actually look into the realities of the world, that your business and your people has grown with the business, but the business has become, many of the things that you have has become obsolete. So the business end up becoming less effective. We applied scaling to an ineffective organization at this point. And what you get out of that is more inefficiency, of course. So we had to, at a very late time, at Sitecore, suddenly optimize the business. We ran Project Atlas. That was the worst time of my life ever, because we fired 22% of all our employees, more than 250 people. We cut product lines, products that we loved. We cut those off. We had at that point in our portfolio 8 or 9 products. We cut some of those off. We fired all employees. And that's a hard thing to do. But what we ended up with a few years later, actually 1 year later, was that we almost saw the same revenue with 22% fewer employees, but the cost was actually back to projection. The thing is, when you grow so fast, then you tend to have people who have been with you for a long time, and they are not always growing at the same pace as the organization. These old people who have been with you for a long time, used to be stars, and you tend to still think of them as stars in the organization because you have loyalty to them, of course. But they may not be so any longer, and they may be people actually dragging down the growth of the organization. So you have to sometimes, and it's really hard to do, right? Cleaning up people that you've been with so long, friends, because you will be friends after a while. That's a tough thing, right? I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks before, I couldn't sleep for 4 weeks after. Fortunately, everybody got a job within 2 months, right? Of all those people, except 9 people who decided to travel the world. The second thing was that all our products grew really fast, and they were all profitable. But we are aiming for a 30 to 35% growth, and we actually have products who grew 20%. Now, the thing is, it's really hard when you have been investing a lot of money in a product, and it grows by 20%, to suddenly cut that product off. But it drags down the average growth of your business. Why not put all the chips from that product group into where it actually matters? It's really tough, right, to do so, and it's a situation that you should try to avoid. So my advice is, my hacks, so to speak, is put this on an agenda, take a screenshot, put it on your agenda every single December, every year, and go through the list, right? Look at if you're actually becoming too opportunistic when you go international. Check your product. Are you actually solving a problem for the customers, even though you're growing 100% a year? And finally, every year, do your housekeeping, because then you may have only to fire, or at least replace 10 people rather than 250 people. Thanks.